The Council on American Islamic Relations is suing the Attorney General for Texas. His name is Ken Paxton, following the firing of a teacher who refused to sign on to a pledge in her school contract. Now, the pledge has to do with a law that was passed in the state of Texas last year. I missed this law, but this law is clearly unconstitutional as it violates free speech. Now, what does the law say? A government entity may not enter into a contract with a company for goods or services unless the contract contains a written verification from the company that it does not boycott Israel and will not boycott Israel during the term of the contract.
Preposterous.
Okay. So this is, again, this is a law in the state of Texas. It is illegal in the state of Texas to be part of the BDS movement, right? Which is a movement to boycott, business relations or products coming from Israel. And the whole point is to hold the Israeli government accountable for the way that they have treated the Palestinians. Now, when one language specialist, her name is Bahia Amawi, was up for renewal in her contract, she saw that this pledge was included. Now, she's a Palestinian herself. She's been living in the United States for the last 30 years. She has actually done work for this particular school district for nearly a decade. She's never had any problems, but she felt that it was her moral obligation to not sign on to that pledge because she sees how Palestinians are treated in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now, with that said, The Intercept actually spoke to her, and I don't want to put any words in her mouth. Let's take a look at what she had to say about all this.
The point of boycotting any products that supports Israel is to put pressure on the Israeli government to change its treatment, the inhumane treatment of the Palestinian people. Having grown up as a Palestinian, I know firsthand the oppression and the struggle that Palestinians face on a daily basis. I have to set an example for my kids. We got to stand up for what's the justice and for right and equal opportunity for everybody and humane conditions. And so for me, it was an easy decision in that aspect. I could not sign it. I was forced to depart from my job because I will not sign it, and I cannot return back if I don't sign it. I have been here in the States for over 30 years. I'm an American citizen. I follow the law, and so I have the luxury of having these rights, which many people in other countries do not have. It infringes on all my principles. And on top of that, my right to speech and also right to protest. It's baffling that they can throw this down our throats, and decide to protect another country's economy versus protect our constitutional rights.
So one quick clarification, if you're a resident of Texas and you're part of the BDS movement, the government's not gonna come after you. However, again, the law indicates that a government entity, and that includes school districts, are not allowed to participate in this movement, in the BDS movement. And so since she's a teacher who would sign a contract with a school district, she is fired or barred from working for that school district if she refuses to sign that pledge. And she has refused to sign that pledge. So Ken Paxton is being taken to court as a result of this, as I think he should. I think this is a real First Amendment violation, and we'll see how this goes. I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, so Amawi is not a Palestinian hero. She's an American hero because she's fighting for our Constitution. And she's clearly right. This is the biggest no-brainer in this issue. America has a long history of economic boycotts. For example, the Boston Tea Party was an economic boycott of British tea companies. That's how we started this country. That's why the founding fathers put in freedom of speech into the United States Constitution. And so civil rights era, also economic boycotts of the bus companies, sometimes of the diners that didn't allow black people to sit in the same place as white people, but the bus boycotts were the most famous. So those are all freedom of speech and great American movements that led to progress, and that's what American heroes do. And I'm curious where all the so-called freedom of speech defenders are. Where are you, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Bill Maher, all you anti-Muslim bigots? Where are you? Where are you? Are you jumping up and down? Oh my God, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Or is it only freedom of speech when you're getting paid? And hey, let's rally all the right wingers to get me paid. No, is it only freedom of speech when you're saying terrible, bigoted, racist, sexist things over and over and over again? Why can't I be popular? I mean, the billionaires pay me to say this propaganda, but people aren't popular. I'm not popular with people. Oh, that's a freedom of speech issue. No, that's not a freedom of speech issue. This is the government actually clamping down on speech. It's an actual First Amendment issue. It's actually unconstitutional. Where are you? Where are you? Are you defending the Palestinian American? No way. You know why? Because you never meant freedom of speech. You were always goddamn liars, and you hate Muslims. So just be honest about it, and let's move on with our lives. And the state of Texas should be sued to high heaven. She's obviously gonna win. This is massively unconstitutional, and I hope she gets $1 billion. And now finally the issue of BDS. So why is BDS? So wait, let me get this right. The Palestinians, they shouldn't do terrorism. Everybody agrees to that. I agree to that 1,000,000,000%. I think it's immoral, counterproductive. I've said it 1,000,000 times. Okay, so everybody agrees to that. That makes sense. But then you turn around and say they should not go to the United Nations. So they shouldn't do violence, agreed. They shouldn't do diplomacy. And they shouldn't do economic protests. So what kind of protests are they allowed to do? Oh, right, they're not allowed to do any protests because you don't believe in speech and you don't believe in human rights. You just want to crush them. Your answer to them is just enjoy your occupation. And look, I know Ben Shapiro is a monster, and we know what kind of a sellout loser Dave Rubin is and those likes. Bill Maher, who are you? You know, oh, I'm a progressive, but hey, the occupation's awesome. It's awesome. The Muslims are irredeemable. They're the violent ones, really. They're getting massacred in Myanmar. They're putting in concentration camps in China, the Uygur people are. In Yemen, they're being starved to death. And in the Middle East, they get bombed to no end. And in Palestine, they're occupied for 50 years. And they're the ones who do violence, but yet Bill Maher and his like constantly push the propaganda that it's not that the Muslims are being inflicted with one massacre and devastation and bombing after another, after another, after another. No, somehow they are the violent ones. Bill, why don't you say the same thing about black people? Just join your right-wing friends, okay? Where they say, oh no, even though white people did slavery and lynching on black people, blacks are the violent ones. Ben Shapiro thinks, hey, it's an open question. Hey, you know, black people, what are their genes? God damn it, these people are monsters. That's who they are. So if you actually cared about freedom of speech, she would be your hero, but you don't because you're massive hypocrites. Just own it and move on with your lives. I hope she wins.
You know, the intimidation campaigns that are launched against people who do participate in the BDS movement, I mean, they're pretty amazing, especially considering the tactics that they use and then accuse others of doing. So let me just explain what I mean. If you are in support of the movement or if you say anything favorable about it, I guarantee you, and we know from personal experience, that articles are gonna be published about you arguing that you're anti-Semitic, which is absolutely ridiculous. Look, I have not joined that movement. For me, you know, this is an issue about human rights, and we've talked about the treatment of Palestinians for a long time at the Young Turks. I have absolutely no ill will. No one on this network has any ill will toward Israelis, toward the Israeli people. But the way that the Israeli government is handling the situation is leading to more violence in the area. It's leading to more hostility in the area. It's not keeping the Israelis safe. It is a terrible way of handling things. And so if you talk about that openly, transparently, freely, and accurately, you will be brushed off as an anti-Semite. If you join this movement, which is a peaceful movement, right? You're considered an anti-Semite and a dangerous person that apparently can't get a contract to work at a school district in Texas. I mean, what country do we live in? And by the way, if this applies to the BDS movement and we allow it to stand, it could apply to any other protest, any other nonviolent protest in a country that is supposed to value freedom of speech.
And why? Why do they call you anti-Semitic? Obviously, it's to shut you down, but it's also projection. They're like, no, Muslims, Sam Harris, another top one here, irredeemable, irredeemable. Ben Shapiro says they live in open sewage to Palestinians. How do you think they got there? Because of your goddamn blockade that you support as a right winger. So Now, since they're anti-Muslim bigots, they assume, well, if you're against my right-wing fascism, you must be anti-Semitic. No. Jews in this country are wonderfully liberal. They're the second most liberal demographic in the country. They do not agree with your fascism. They do not agree, and you do not speak for them. And they make us clarify the most obvious things in the world. Because you don't agree with the right-wing government of Israel, of course does not mean that you're even against Israel, let alone Jewish Americans or Jews overall. That's preposterous. I don't agree with the Turkish government's treatment of Kurds. That doesn't make me anti-Turkish. And we don't make those outlandish claims because we're not doing disingenuous propaganda like they are, okay? And they do it again and again. And look, if it was, let's say it's a government that I agree with, and somebody wants to boycott Finland or Norway or Mexico for some reason, am I gonna be like, okay, that's it, fire them? How dare they protest Norway or Mexico? Of course not, it's a free country. They can protest anyone they like, but not if you're the right wing, because they don't believe in this country. They actually believe in an authoritarian form of government. And that's why they back laws like this, because they believe in oppression. Well, we will not be occupied in our own country.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.